Listen to me very carefully. If you're here because you've been hurt, betrayed, laughed at, ignored, or underestimated, good. That pain you're carrying, that fire in your chest. Most people try to numb it, run from it, cry about it. Winners do something different. Winners weaponize it. Because the truth is simple and brutal. Crying never changed anything. Complaining never scared anyone. And revenge driven by emotion always makes you weak. But success is cold. Success is permanent. And success is the only revenge that actually works. You don't need to shout. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain your side of the story to people who already decided not to believe you. Every word you waste trying to convince them is energy stolen from your future. Weak people seek validation. Strong people seek results. And results don't talk, they dominate. While you're busy proving yourself, someone else is building, stacking, training, sharpening. That's the difference between losers and champions. Here's what nobody tells you. Your enemies don't fear your anger. They fear your discipline. They fear the version of you that wakes up early, trains hard, works in silence, and doesn't need applause. They fear consistency because anger burns fast, but discipline burns forever. When you stop reacting emotionally and start moving strategically, you become dangerous, calm, focused, unstoppable. Think about it. The people who doubted you are living rent, free in your head, but you're invisible to them. That imbalance has to end, not by attacking them, but by outgrowing them so violently that your name alone reminds them of their mistake. Success flips the power dynamic without you saying a single word. One day they look you up and they realize you didn't just survive, you won. Every setback you faced was a test. Every insult was a signal. Every closed door was life asking you one question. Are you going to break or are you going to build? Most people break. They get bitter. They scroll. They talk. They stay average. You don't get revenge by being average. You get revenge by becoming elite, by turning yourself into something undeniable. Let me be clear, this isn't about money alone. Money is just a scoreboard. This is about respect. Self-respect first. The respect that comes from knowing you didn't quit when it was hard, when it was lonely, when nobody believed in you. The respect that comes from becoming a man or woman of standards, not emotions, of systems, not excuses, of action, not intention. Your enemies expect you to fail quietly. They expect you to fade away and confirm their opinion. Nothing terrifies them more than you doing the opposite. Nothing hurts them more than seeing you disciplined, calm, improving, winning. Not revenge plots, not insults, not drama, just results. Clean, cold, relentless results. So stop talking about what they did to you. Start talking about what you're building. Stop replaying old conversations in your head. Start designing a future so big it erases the past. Every workout is a statement. Every late night is a message. Every sacrifice is proof that you chose greatness over comfort. And here's the best part. When you finally reach that level, you won't even care about revenge anymore. That's the real victory. The moment you realize they're irrelevant, the moment your life becomes so full, so powerful, so focused that looking back feels pointless. That's when you know you've won. Pain is not your enemy, and if you still believe it is, you haven't understood how winners are forged. Pain is the raw material of power. It is the pressure that exposes who you really are when comfort is stripped away. Most people spend their entire lives trying to escape it, numb it, or blame someone else for it. That's why they stay small. The moment you decide to stop treating pain like a curse and start treating it like fuel, everything changes. That shift alone separates the average from the elite. Think about it. Every person who ever became dangerous, respected, or unstoppable was shaped by something that hurt. No one grows in comfort. Comfort is a slow poison. It dulls your edge, weakens your discipline, and convinces you that tomorrow is guaranteed. Pain does the opposite. Pain wakes you up. Pain forces honesty. Pain asks you a question you can't ignore. Are you going to break, or are you going to build something stronger than what tried to break you? Here's the harsh truth most people avoid. Pain doesn't destroy lives. Weak responses to pain do. Two people can go through the same struggle. One becomes bitter, loud, and entitled. The other becomes focused, silent, and relentless. The difference is not luck, talent, or background. The difference is interpretation. One person sees pain as proof that life is unfair. The other sees it as a signal that it's time to level up. If you've been betrayed, underestimated, or humiliated, you've been given a gift, whether you realize it or not. That feeling in your chest, that quiet rage, that refusal to accept where you are, most people never experience it. They drift through life half awake. Pain sharpens you. It gives you clarity. It strips away illusions and shows you exactly who was real and who was never meant to come with you. But pain only becomes fuel if you discipline it. Uncontrolled pain turns into excuses, anger, and self-destruction. Controlled pain turns into work ethic, precision, and patience. That's why emotional people lose. They react instead of building. They talk instead of training. They complain instead of creating systems that make them stronger every single day. The elite don't waste pain in emotional outbursts. They store it. They convert it. They invest it into habits that compound. Ask yourself this honestly. How many days have you let your pain slow you down instead of speeding you up? How many nights have you replayed old conversations instead of preparing for a future that makes those memories irrelevant? Every second spent feeling sorry for yourself is a second someone else is using to get ahead of you. Pain doesn't pause the race. It accelerates it for those who understand how to use it. The strongest people you admire didn't become that way because life was kind to them. They became strong because life tested them, and they refused to stay the same. They learned to wake up early even when motivation was dead. They learned to work when nobody was watching. They learned to improve in silence while others were busy explaining their struggles to anyone who would listen. That's what pain teaches when you let it lead you, not control you. There's a moment, if you're paying attention, when pain stops hurting and starts commanding respect. It's the moment you realize you don't need sympathy. You need progress. You don't need validation, you need results. From that moment on, your mindset shifts. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, how do I use this to become untouchable? That question alone can change the trajectory of your life. Pain is not asking for your tears. It's demanding your growth. It's daring you to rise to a level where the things that once hurt you can no longer reach you. When you finally understand this, you stop being a victim of your past and start becoming the architect of your future. And the world has a strange respect for people who turn suffering into strength because deep down, everyone knows how rare that mindset really is. Most people think fear comes from noise, aggression, or confrontation. It doesn't. Real fear is born in silence. Silence mixed with discipline creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people uncomfortable. When you stop announcing your moves, stop explaining your plans, and stop reacting to every provocation, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable people are dangerous. Your enemies don't fear your words because words are cheap. They fear the version of you that disappears, works, and returns transformed. Discipline is invisible at first, and that's why weak people dismiss it. They don't see the early mornings, the repetition, the boredom, the days when motivation is dead, but standards remain high. They assume nothing is happening because nothing is being posted, nothing is being said, nothing is being justified. That assumption is their mistake. While they're distracted by entertainment and emotion, you're stacking days. And stacked days turn into momentum that can't be stopped. Silence removes the need for validation. The moment you stop talking, you stop leaking energy. Every argument avoided, every explanation refused, every insult ignored is power saved. Emotional people burn energy trying to be understood. Disciplined people conserve it and redirect it into progress. That redirection is what shifts the balance. Suddenly, you're not reacting to the world, you're shaping it on your terms. There's a reason disciplined silence unsettles people. Humans are wired to predict patterns. When you remove predictability, you remove their sense of control. They don't know if you're failing or building. They don't know if you're broken or evolving. And that gap in knowledge creates anxiety. Your calm, your consistency, your refusal to engage in drama becomes louder than any announcement ever could. Think about this carefully. When someone insults you and you respond emotionally, they win twice. They get a reaction and they confirm that they still have access to your mind. When you stay silent and improve, they lose control. They're left guessing, they start watching. And eventually, they start comparing. That's when discipline becomes terrifying, not because it's flashy, but because it's undeniable. Discipline compounds quietly. One workout doesn't change your body. One focused day doesn't change your life. But repeated without interruption, discipline builds a version of you that can't be argued with. Results speak a language everyone understands. No explanations required. No defenses needed. The moment your progress becomes visible, the people who once underestimated you feel it without you saying a word. Silence also forces accountability. When you stop talking about what you're going to do, you're left alone with what you actually do. There's no audience to impress, no sympathy to collect. Just you and your standards. That environment exposes weakness fast. Either you rise to meet your own expectations, or you confront the truth about your effort. That honesty is uncomfortable, but it's necessary for growth. Most people crave attention before they deserve it. They want recognition before results. They want applause while they're still average. Discipline flips that order. It demands sacrifice first and rewards later. That delay is what filters out the weak. Only those who can endure boredom, isolation, and doubt make it through to the other side. And when they do, the same people who ignored them suddenly want explanations. Your enemies don't need to hear about your plans. They don't need updates. They don't need warnings. Let them believe nothing is happening. Let them assume you've accepted defeat. Let them stay comfortable in that illusion while you sharpen quietly. Because when discipline finally shows itself through success, it hits harder than any confrontation ever could. Silence backed by discipline creates an internal authority. You no longer need to prove yourself because you trust your process. That confidence is not loud or arrogant. It's grounded. It shows in how you move, how you speak, how you make decisions. People sense it immediately. They may not know what changed, but they know something did, and that unspoken shift is what truly unsettles them. When you master silence and discipline together, you remove yourself from emotional warfare and enter a different arena entirely. One where outcomes matter more than opinions and progress outweighs noise. In that space, your enemies aren't fighting you anymore. They're fighting the reality that you became something they can no longer reach. Most people sabotage themselves not because they lack ability, but because they let emotion sit in the driver's seat. Emotion feels powerful in the moment. Anger feels like strength. Excitement feels like confidence. Frustration feels like urgency. But emotion is chaotic. It reacts. It overcorrects. It burns energy without direction. Strategy does the opposite. Strategy is calm under pressure. Strategy observes before it moves. The moment you learn to pause instead of explode, to calculate instead of complain, you step into a higher tier of power. Ask yourself this: how many opportunities have you destroyed by reacting too fast? One message sent in anger. One argument you didn't need to win. One decision made to feel good now instead of building something better later. Emotional reactions give instant relief and long-term damage. Strategic movement delays gratification but compounds results. Winners understand this trade off early. Losers learn it too late. Emotion makes you predictable. If people know how to trigger you, they control you. Every button they can press becomes a leash. Strategy cuts that leash. When you stop reacting on cue, the game changes. Suddenly, you're not defending yourself. You're positioning yourself. You're not explaining. You're executing. You're not chasing outcomes. You're engineering them. Strategic people ask different questions. Instead of, how do I respond to this? They ask, where does this fit in my long-term plan? Instead of, how do I prove them wrong right now? They ask, what action makes me undeniable over time? This shift sounds simple, but it's rare. It requires ego control. It requires patience. It requires the courage to look calm when everyone expects you to be emotional. Here's the hook most people miss. Strategy is not slow. It's efficient. Emotional reactions feel fast, but they often send you in circles. Strategy looks slower because it ignores distractions. While others are busy reacting to headlines, opinions, and insults, you're building leverage. While they're burning bridges in moments of anger, you're creating optionality. Over time, the gap becomes obvious. Emotion wants an audience. Strategy prefers privacy. Emotional people announce moves before they're ready. Strategic people wait until results speak for them. That silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. It protects your focus and denies others the chance to interfere. When you move strategically, you reduce noise, conserve energy, and increase accuracy. Pressure reveals everything. Under pressure, emotional thinkers panic. They rush decisions, compromise standards, and chase short-term relief. Strategic thinkers slow down under pressure. They zoom out. They identify constraints, assess risks, and choose actions that keep control on their side. This ability alone separates leaders from followers. Calm is not the absence of emotion, it's mastery over it. Another truth strategy turns setbacks into assets. Emotion treats setbacks as personal attacks. Strategy treats them as data. When something goes wrong, emotional thinkers ask who to blame. Strategic thinkers ask what to learn. That difference determines whether a setback becomes a scar or a stepping stone. Data compounds. Blame stagnates. Look at anyone who consistently wins in business, sport, or life. They're not emotional in execution. They may feel deeply, but they act precisely. They build systems that function regardless of mood. They make decisions based on probabilities, not pride. They understand that ego is expensive and control is priceless. When you stop reacting emotionally, you gain time. Time to think, time to plan, time to choose the move that puts you ahead 3 steps, not 1. That time advantage is lethal. It allows you to strike when it matters and stay quiet when it doesn't. Most people exhaust themselves fighting every battle. Strategic people choose the battlefield. This is where true confidence is born. Not from shouting, not from dominance displays, but from knowing that every move you make serves a purpose. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to rush outcomes. You trust your process because it's intentional. And intention, applied consistently, beats raw emotion every time. The moment you replace emotional reactions with strategic movement, you stop being controlled by circumstances and start controlling direction. You become harder to manipulate, harder to distract, and harder to stop. That's not motivation, that's leverage. Average is the most dangerous place a person can live because it feels safe while quietly killing potential. Failure at least hurts enough to wake you up, but average keeps you asleep. It convinces you that you're doing okay, that there's no urgency, no real threat. And that lie costs more lives, dreams, and futures than any dramatic collapse ever could. People don't fall to the bottom by accident, they settle into the middle by choice. Average is where ambition goes to die slowly. It's where people learn just enough to survive, but never enough to dominate. They work just hard enough to avoid criticism, but never hard enough to earn respect. They convince themselves that comfort is balance, that mediocrity is realism, and that extraordinary results are reserved for other people. That mindset doesn't fail loudly, it fades quietly. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Look around and you'll see it everywhere. People following routines they hate, chasing weekends, counting years instead of building skills. They tell themselves they're being patient, when in reality, they're just avoiding discomfort. Average people don't lack dreams, they lack the courage to demand more from themselves daily. They wait for motivation instead of building discipline. They wait for clarity instead of taking action. And in that waiting, life passes them by. Here's the hook most don't want to hear. Being average is harder in the long run than striving for excellence. Excellence requires effort up front, but average demands lifelong regret. Excellence asks for sacrifice now. Average collects payment later in frustration, envy, and quiet resentment. When you choose average, you're not choosing peace, you're choosing a slow, invisible war with your own potential. Average also destroys perspective. When everyone around you is mediocre, mediocrity feels normal. Standards drop. Excuses become acceptable. Weak effort gets praised because it's common. That environment doesn't challenge you. It numbs you. And once numbness sets in, growth feels uncomfortable, even threatening. That's why average people often mock ambition. It reminds them of what they chose not to pursue. The real failure isn't missing a goal or making a mistake. The real failure is refusing to raise your standards after you know better. Once you've tasted improvement, once you've felt what progress feels like, settling becomes a decision, not an accident. And decisions carry responsibility. That responsibility scares people, so they hide behind good enough. Average living also keeps you reactive. You're always responding to life instead of directing it. Bills dictate your choices. Opinions influence your confidence. Circumstances control your mood. When you aim higher, you regain control. You stop living week to week and start thinking in years. You stop asking what's easy and start asking what's effective. High standards change everything. They change how you train, how you work, how you speak, how you tolerate excuses, especially your own. Standards turn effort into identity. You don't push yourself because you feel like it. You push yourself because that's who you are. And once that identity is formed, average becomes unbearable, not intimidating, unacceptable. People who reject average don't do it because they think they're special. They do it because they refuse to waste their limited time. They understand that life doesn't reward intentions, it rewards execution. They know that comfort today steals opportunity tomorrow. So they choose the harder path early to earn freedom later. When you stop settling, you start seeing clearly. You notice how much potential you were leaving unused. You notice how many limits were self-imposed. And that realization can be uncomfortable, even painful. But it's honest. Honesty is the first requirement of growth. Without it, you stay average forever, convincing yourself that you tried. Average is not neutral. It's a slow decline disguised as stability. And once you see it for what it is, you can't unsee it. That awareness creates pressure, not from the world, but from within. Pressure to rise, to sharpen, to demand more from yourself than yesterday. That pressure is not a burden. It's proof that you're no longer willing to live beneath your capability. Power in life is rarely about loud dominance or forceful confrontation. Real power shifts quietly, almost invisibly, and then suddenly becomes undeniable. That shift happens the moment your success starts speaking for you. Before results, people feel comfortable questioning you, doubting you, and placing you beneath them in their mental hierarchy. After results, the same people adjust their tone, their behavior, and their respect, often without ever admitting they were wrong. That's the power dynamic changing, and it always follows success. When you have nothing to show, opinions rule. Everyone feels entitled to comment on your choices, your ability, your future. Advice is freely given, criticism is casual, and doubt is constant. Not because people hate you, but because there's no cost to underestimating you. You're safe to ignore. You're safe to dismiss. That safety disappears the moment your actions produce visible outcomes. Success removes debate. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend. It doesn't explain. It replaces conversation with comparison. Suddenly, people measure themselves against you instead of measuring you against their expectations. That mental shift is subtle but brutal. What once felt like confidence on their side turns into insecurity, not because you attacked them, but because your progress exposed the gap. Here's the hook most people miss. Success changes how people treat you even when you say nothing. Your presence carries weight. Your decisions are taken seriously. Your time becomes valuable. The same words that were ignored before now get attention. Not because you changed how you speak, but because you changed what you represent. Results create authority, and authority rewrites relationships. This is why chasing validation is pointless. Validation keeps you dependent. Success makes you independent. When you depend on approval, others control the rules. When you produce results, you set them. That's the real shift in power. You stop asking for permission, socially, financially, mentally. You move from reacting to choosing. Watch closely how people behave around someone who is winning. They become careful. Their jokes soften. Their criticism turns into curiosity. Some become supportive, others become distant, but none remain neutral. Success forces people to reveal themselves. It exposes who respected you and who only tolerated you. That clarity alone is worth the effort. The power dynamic also changes internally. Before success, doubt lives loudly in your mind. You question your decisions. You replay mistakes. You wonder if you're capable. As you stack wins, small at first, then undeniable, self-trust replaces noise. You no longer need reassurance because evidence exists. That internal shift is the foundation of external confidence. Success also removes emotional leverage from others. Insults lose impact. Opinions lose sting. You're no longer easily provoked because your identity isn't fragile. You've proven something to yourself. That self-proof is stronger than any compliment or criticism. When people sense that stability, they stop trying to test you. Another uncomfortable truth: success makes some people uncomfortable around you. Not because you changed, but because your growth reflects their stagnation. That discomfort often shows up as distance, passive remarks, or sudden disinterest. This isn't betrayal. It's alignment correcting itself. Power dynamics always rebalance when one side evolves. The mistake many people make is trying to force respect before earning leverage. They demand recognition instead of building results. That approach always fails. Respect that isn't backed by outcomes is temporary. Respect that comes from success is durable. It doesn't disappear when moods change or conversations end. When your success shifts the power dynamic, you don't need to remind anyone of what you've achieved. The room already knows. Decisions come to you. Opportunities find you. People listen differently. And the ones who once doubted you quietly adjust their narrative to protect their ego. You don't correct them. You don't need to. This is why focusing on improvement is more effective than focusing on enemies. Enemies respond to emotion. Success responds to structure, discipline, and patience. When you commit to growth, you're not just improving your circumstances, you're redesigning how the world interacts with you. Power isn't taken by force in the long run. It's earned through consistency. And once earned, it changes everything, from how others see you, to how you see yourself, to what you're willing to tolerate ever again. At the beginning, revenge feels like a necessity. It feels justified, even righteous. When someone hurts you, disrespects you, or underestimates you, the instinct to make them feel the same pain is natural. Your mind replays moments, words, situations, and it tells you that peace will come once they regret what they did. That belief keeps most people trapped. They think revenge will give them closure, when in reality it only keeps them emotionally tied to the very people they should be outgrowing. Here's the uncomfortable truth. As long as you crave revenge, you're still beneath them. Not morally, mentally. They still occupy space in your thoughts. They still influence your emotions. They still have power over your internal state. That's not dominance, that's dependency. Real power begins the moment your life starts moving so fast, so forward, that looking back feels pointless. When you start winning consistently, something strange happens. The anger that once felt urgent begins to fade, not because you forgave, not because you forgot, but because you evolved. Your days become filled with purpose. Your goals demand attention. Your standards rise. And suddenly, emotional debt to the past feels expensive. You realize that carrying resentment costs energy you now need for growth. This is where most people get confused. They think letting go of revenge means letting others win. It doesn't. It means the game changed. You're no longer competing on the same level. While they're still operating emotionally, you're operating strategically. While they're stuck in old narratives, you're building a future that doesn't require their acknowledgement. That's not weakness, that's elevation. Success creates distance. Not just physical or financial distance, but psychological distance. The insults that once cut deep now feel irrelevant. The opinions that once haunted you now feel outdated. You don't need to defend yourself because your reality speaks louder than memory ever could. And that's when revenge becomes unnecessary, not because you lost the desire, but because you outgrew the need. The strongest moment isn't when someone apologizes. It isn't when they admit they were wrong. It's when you realize their validation no longer matters. That realization hits quietly. One day you notice you haven't thought about them in weeks. One day you hear their name and feel nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just indifference. Indifference is not emptiness, it's freedom. Winning changes your priorities. You stop measuring life by emotional scores and start measuring it by impact. Time becomes valuable. Focus becomes sacred. You no longer waste mental energy fantasizing about outcomes that don't move you forward. You channel that energy into systems, discipline, and execution, and that redirection multiplies results. There's also a deeper shift that happens internally. When you no longer need revenge, your confidence stabilizes. It's no longer reactive. You're not driven by proving people wrong. You're driven by building something right. That difference is subtle, but powerful. Reactive motivation burns hot and fast. Purpose-driven motivation burns steady and long. People who never reach this stage stay trapped in emotional cycles. They succeed a little, fail a little, but remain attached to old wounds. Their success is fragile because it's tied to comparison. When comparison disappears, clarity appears. You stop asking how you look and start asking how you perform. You stop caring who's watching and start caring what's being built. Ironically, this is when your success has the greatest impact on those who once doubted you. Not because you intended it, but because you didn't. The absence of bitterness is unsettling to people who expected you to be angry forever. Your calm becomes proof of superiority. Your focus becomes proof of growth. When revenge becomes irrelevant, you reclaim full ownership of your mind. No external event dictates your emotional state. No past injustice defines your future behavior. You're no longer moving away from pain. You're moving toward purpose. And that shift marks the final transition from survival to dominance. At that level, winning isn't loud. It's quiet, controlled, and complete. You don't need to look back to feel accomplished. You don't need anyone to acknowledge what you overcame. Your life itself becomes the answer. So remember this. Don't chase revenge. Don't chase approval. Don't chase closure. Chase excellence. Chase mastery. Chase the version of yourself that would make your enemies feel small without you lifting a finger. Let them wonder how you did it. Let them regret underestimating you. Let your silence be loud and your success be brutal. Because in the end, the world doesn't care about your pain story. It cares about who stands at the top. And when you get there, you won't need revenge at all. Your success will say everything.